So as a medical doctor, how did I come to the perspective that a whole food plant-based diet is the best way to go? It all came down rather serendipitously. I've always thought for a long period of time that nutrition was important to health, but as a physician, we don't really get that much training in medical school about nutrition, and really nothing about the connection between dietary patterns and disease. So my nutritional knowledge really wasn't that much better than the average person. I'd always been fit, had always stayed very active, and for a while I was actually on a path to becoming a professional bodybuilder. I abandoned that path because of the demands of my medical education, which were actually much more important to me at that time. I was driving to work one day, and I happened to be listening to a short YouTube video featuring Dr. Michael Greger, the author of How Not to Die. I'd never heard of him at that point in my life, and he said something that was rather astounding to me. He stated that vitamin B12 does actually not come from animals, but it comes from bacteria. And I thought that that was really interesting. What his claim was is that living in the natural world prior to the advent of super sterility, where we have clean drinking water, we keep everything very clean and have little exposure to dirt and so on, that we would have naturally gotten enough vitamin B12 by just drinking untreated water. Not to say that that's a particularly good idea, because you can get diseases like giardiasis and cholera from untreated water. And on balance, certainly drinking treated water is better than drinking untreated water. But the point is that a person could get enough vitamin B12 just by drinking water and interacting with the natural world by pulling vegetables out of the ground and so on, and having a little bit of dirt on it. I'd always thought that plant-based diets were really kind of silly. Any diet where you would have to take a vitamin B12 supplement to not get sick seemed by definition an unhealthy diet. Dr. Greger opened my eyes, and I ran right out and got his book, How Not to Die. I read it feverishly. In fact, I thought it was really fascinating, so I read it twice in a row, just sucking up everything he said. And in that book, he goes through the top 15 causes of death and explains their connection to nutrition. The number one cause of death, heart disease, which kills about 40% of everyone that we know, is intimately tied with heart disease. And societies that eat basically a whole food plant-based diet don't get heart disease to the degree that we do in North America, where it's so common. There's a big autopsy series that showed the case-matched autopsy series from Uganda, looking at autopsies from people from Uganda versus age-matched autopsies in the United States. And heart disease was virtually absent in the series from Uganda. I believe that there was about 600 autopsies involved in each country. There was one small heart attack in one of the Ugandan people, but it was a non-fatal heart attack, as opposed to heart attacks causing 30 or 40% of the deaths in the American population. So it's been known for a long time that there's a connection between diet and heart disease, and subsequent trials with Dr. Esselstyn and Dr. Ornish showed that heart disease could be arrested and even reversed with an aggressive whole food plant-based diet. This was all news to me, but I thought I'd better give it a try. I knew I had high cholesterol and was in deep denial about that. My father had been diagnosed with a type of muscle disease that probably was caused by him taking a statin medication and ultimately led to his demise. I certainly wasn't in a big hurry to start taking statins. So the way I dealt with was I simply denied the whole problem. When I read How Not to Die and subsequently read The Starch Solution by Dr. John McDougall, I was empowered to find out that there was something that I could do about this and actually deal with the problem, which was to change to a whole food plant-based diet. After reading Dr. Greger's book, I was hungry for more information, so I got a hold of Dr. McDougall's book, The Starch Solution. And in that book, he advocates a low-fat, high-carbohydrate, plant-based diet. I was really incredulous because I was under the misconception that diabetes and weight gain was caused by eating high-carb diets. I really didn't understand the difference between healthy carbohydrates and unhealthy carbohydrates. In a nutshell, the more healthy carbohydrates you eat, the better your insulin works, the less overweight you'll be, and potentially solving any diabetic problems. Well, I was skeptical. I was very skeptical. I thought I would suspend my disbelief for 3 or 4 days and eat nothing but healthy, high-carbohydrate foods like beans, peas, corn, rice, potatoes, lentils, and fruit. I expected my weight to go up and expected my blood sugar to go up. I'd been tracking my blood sugar from time to time with a home glucometer because my blood sugar did tend to run a little bit high. And because I didn't understand the mechanisms of diabetes at that time, if I ate a lot of carbohydrates, my blood sugar would go up. But if you get rid of the dietary fat and eat healthy carbohydrates, your insulin receptors will start to work better and your blood sugars will come down. Like I say, I was incredulous. Well, I did it for 3 or 4 days, and within 3 days, my blood sugar completely normalized. Not only was it normal, it was at the bottom of the normal range, which is exactly where you want it. Because there's proportionality between your fasting blood sugar, even within the normal range, and the risk for diseases like heart disease. My blood sugar, after 3 days on basically a McDougall diet, went to 65, when from time to time it was going over 100, which by definition meant that I was pre-diabetic. I was totally astonished. Not only did my blood sugar normalize, I dropped a couple of pounds. So I was just astonished by this. I decided to just keep going with it. And ultimately what happened was I lost about 16 pounds of fat. And my muscles just got leaner and harder. I'd actually started out really quite lean. And around 2013 or so, I'd had a body fat analysis that showed that I was 0 percentile in my body fat. What that meant was if you took 100 men, I would always be the leanest of that group of 100 men. And as far as percentage goes, I was 10.6%. And the DEXA scan compared to other body fat measurement methods tends to read a little bit higher. So I went from being lean to even leaner with no hunger. My muscles did seem to get a little bit smaller, but I think that it was because I was getting rid of the intramuscular fat, which was what was causing me to have insulin resistance. I didn't lose any physical strength. In fact, I got a little bit stronger. And what I really noticed is that my endurance and recovery massively improved. I got so I never really needed to take a day off from exercising. I worked out pretty hard and have for a number of years, but I always thought I had to take a couple days off every week just to let my body recover. I recover so well now that I'm on a whole food plant-based diet, I hardly ever take a day off from having around an hour or more of physical activity. I just don't feel the need for it. I was doing a mix of both weight training and indoor and outdoor biking. And I'd been averaging about 40 miles a week total, which is certainly not what a high-level endurance athlete would do. But I was curious to see if I could go 100 miles in one go. So it was November in Minnesota at the time. I'd been on the plant-based diet for about 2.5 years. So on a day off, I got up early. I didn't know if it was going to take me till midnight to go 100 miles. So I didn't even know if I could actually do it. But I used the online biking program Zwift, which is very realistic. You use it on your own bike, taking the back wheel off and hooking it up to a trainer. And you experience hills with an increase of resistance and a lack of resistance when you go down the hill. So it's very realistic. And in some ways, it's actually harder than riding a regular bike because you're not stopping for stop signs and that sort of thing. Well, I got on the bike and continued biking, and I did 102 miles in about 6 hours and 20 minutes. I was tired, but it didn't destroy me. My legs were kind of heavy, but I was still ready to work out again the next morning. And in fact, for the 60 days previous to my 102-mile bike ride, I'd worked out every single day, something that would be inconceivable before when I was on a meat-based diet. I came to the conclusion days off from exercise is really just for people that eat a meat-based diet. Not only did my blood sugar normalize, my cholesterol normalized too. My cholesterol had been running about 330, which is sky high. I had it subsequently tested after being on a plant-based diet for a while, and it went down to 143, which puts me into the range where I'm close to being heart attack proof. My LDL, last time I had it measured, was about 80. Ideally, it should be around 70, which puts me at slight risk. But I had massively overall reduced my risk by being on a plant-based diet. Now, one thing to have in mind is that when I was eating a meat-heavy diet, I looked great, I actually felt really good, and I was really very physically strong. This picture was taken when I was 53 years old. At about 190 pounds, I could kettlebell press the 106-pound kettlebell 5 times with my right arm and 3 times with my left arm. I could do pull-ups with like 130 pounds around my waist, and I was deadlifting around 450 pounds. I was strong. I looked good, but inside biochemically, it was a ticking time bomb. It was probably just a matter of time before I would have a heart attack. Now, it alarms me when you see people on social media that advocate low-carb diets, keto diets, paleo diets, or even a carnivore diet. And they may be young and fit and buff, and they mistake the fact that they're fit and buff and performing well physically with the legitimacy of a low-carb carnivore diet. It doesn't mean that their arteries aren't blocking off. It doesn't mean that they couldn't just drop dead. So I'm very, very skeptical of these carnivore diets. I think they're a huge mistake. Now, it's one thing to take a very overweight person, tweak their diet a little bit, and get them to lose 16 pounds or so. That's not that impressive. But in my case, I was lean. I switched to a whole food plant-based diet. I was eating to total satiety. I was not letting myself go hungry, and I was getting leaner. And that weight has stayed off for almost 7 years now, virtually effortlessly. I think that tells you something, when you can get a lean person leaner without really any sense of deprivation at all. It was interesting, when I adopted the whole food plant-based diet, not only did my diabetes or prediabetes resolve, my cholesterol completely normalize, a number of other little things just spontaneously got better, which was totally unexpected. I used to have this rash around the creases on the sides of my nose called acne rosacea, and it just went away. I used to get a bit of gastroesophageal reflux. That stopped. I used to have the odd migraine headache. That went away. And interestingly, I used to build up so much plaque on the inside of my teeth when I was eating a meat-heavy diet that I used to have to get my teeth cleaned at the dentist every 4 months. Once I adopted the whole food plant-based diet, I stopped producing that very much plaque. And in fact, I was scheduled to have a dental cleaning, and for a variety of reasons, I didn't get in for about 8 months. When the hygienist looked at my teeth, there was really a fairly inconsequential amount of plaque, and I went back to just every 6 months seeing the dentist for checkup and cleanings, which tells me that the diet has affected me on a very profound cellular level, that I'm no longer producing plaque like that. And speaking of calcium buildup, I used to have horrible issues with kidney stones. I really haven't had any problems at all since I've been on the plant-based diet. There's a number of mechanisms by eating a meat-based diet affecting your propensity to build up kidney stones. Sadly, kidney stones are becoming more common, and it's probably because of people eating such a poor diet. Now, every one of the top 15 causes of death outlined in How Not to Die are connected to what we eat. I would even argue cause number 3, iatrogenesis, which is death by medical treatment, is also connected to our diet, for the simple reason that if you're healthy, you don't need to interact with doctors. Iatrogenesis includes things like medical mistakes, known side effects from medications and surgeries. It doesn't necessarily mean malpractice. You can die from medical treatment, and it's not necessarily malpractice. But if you don't need doctors because you're healthy, the chance that you're going to die from iatrogenesis goes way down. All of the top 15 causes of death, including iatrogenesis in my view, are connected to some degree with what we eat. And there's sundry other diseases that are intimately tied with what we eat, but may not necessarily cause death. These would include things like gallstones, diverticular disease. These are usually not life-threatening diseases, but are causally related to what we eat. Once I became schooled in a whole food plant-based diet, as a diagnostic radiologist, I started to look at my job in a completely different way. I came to realize that I was simply looking at and describing the imaging manifestations of a bad lifestyle. So much of the common diseases that we see are really lifestyle related, and that's where we spend the bulk of our time. Most doctors in medical practice are spending only a very small amount of their time on rare diseases. Lifestyle-related diseases with common everyday imaging findings include atherosclerotic heart disease with buildup of calcium on the coronary arteries, fatty liver disease, gallstones, diverticulosis, diverticulitis, obesity, peripheral vascular disease, osteoporosis. These are all common everyday diseases, and it wouldn't be that uncommon to see every one of those diseases on a single CT scan. Breast cancer is a disease that I deal with quite commonly in my practice. Much of breast cancer may be lifestyle related. If you look at women eating the typical Asian diet, traditionally their rates of breast cancer are about 20% of what they are in the United States. Through a variety of mechanisms, including modulating hormone levels and so on, the plant-based diet likely reduces risk of breast cancer. And in fact, when Asian women move to the United States, they acquire the breast cancer rates of Americans. I believe that it's very important that you eat a whole food plant-based diet to help prevent breast cancer. To put things in perspective, you have to screen roughly 1,500 women every year for 10 years to prevent a single breast cancer death. Unfortunately, it's a little bit disappointing, but mammography is not that effective at preventing breast cancer death, which is its whole purpose. It saddens me as a radiologist that that's the case. Put that in perspective, conceivably, breast cancer rates could be reduced by 80% by changing what we eat. I'm not saying to not bother get your mammogram, but just put in perspective. If you're going to take the time and trouble to get a mammogram, you should also take the time and trouble to clean up your diet. Prostate cancer is also likely highly related to what we eat. In fact, Dr. T. Colin Campbell has said that the association between prostate cancer and dairy is at least as strong as the association between smoking cigarettes and lung cancer. Sadly, the modern healthcare system is really about ordering imaging tests, prescribing medications, and ordering surgeries. It's really not about dealing with root causes. And the healthcare system doesn't really care about what you eat, and the food system doesn't really care about what your health. So if you're going to get on top of your health and be as healthy as possible, you really need to manage what you're eating and take care of other lifestyle factors like exercise, good sleep, managing relationships, and that sort of thing. Now, when it comes to the whole food plant-based diet, there's various levels of evidence that suggest that this is the right way to go. If you look at the trials on heart disease with Dr. Dean Ornish and Dr. Esselstyn, the data is extremely compelling that a whole food plant-based diet is effective at preventing, arresting, and reversing heart disease. In Dr. Esselstyn's trial, with long-term data, the rate of cardiovascular events was only 1/100th the rate of those people given just standard nutritional guidance. Some areas have very robust evidence, some areas are not quite so robust, but are still highly suggestive of a connection with diet. For example, Dr. Brooke Goldner, who herself had systemic lupus erythematosus, is a disease that is generally considered uncurable and just progresses relentlessly towards death. She stumbled into a whole food plant-based diet and her symptoms got better and all of her blood work completely normalized, and she's been completely fine for years. She's been so compelled by her experience that she now spends her time counseling people with autoimmune disease, and she gets astonishing results. Where there's smoke, there's fire. No, this is not a controlled trial, but it's highly, highly, highly suggestive that the diet was causative in producing the beneficial outcomes. I don't think it was just by chance. Not only do I eat a whole food plant-based diet, I eat a whole food plant-based vegan diet with no animal products at all. In other words, it's a plant-exclusive diet. Why do I go whole hog and completely vegan? Well, there's a few reasons. One is the evidence is very suggestive that the best amount of meat is probably zero. If you look at the China study, which was a large epidemiological study done in collaboration with the Chinese government and Oxford University and Cornell University, the lowest risk of chronic diseases such as cancer was in the demographics that consumed the least meat, i.e. zero, no meat at all. Dr. Colin Campbell points out that there's a wide variety of diseases that are proportional to the amount of animal protein that we take in. And let's say you're looking at kidney cancer and you plot a graph of the incidence rate in the various countries around the world versus the amount of animal protein that they eat. Invariably, there's a best fitting line where there's proportionality between the amount of animal protein and the rate of the disease. Almost invariably, that line will intersect at the 0 point, the origin of the graph, where zero intake correlates with the lowest possible rate of the disease. Now, to prove with absolute certainty that very small amounts of animal protein are most effective at preventing disease would be difficult to run a trial like that. You would need very large study group over a long period of time to absolutely prove that zero intake of animal protein is the best. But that's what the evidence sort of points towards. There was a comparative study done in Taiwan where they looked at two different Buddhist monasteries, one where they ate no animal products at all, and the other one where they ate a little bit. And there was a striking difference in the diabetes rates between the two monasteries, with the ones that consumed a little bit of animal products having higher rates of diabetes by a significant margin. Only small amounts of animal protein are required to increase the rate of diabetes mellitus, type 2. Dr. Greger points out a 2013 meta-analysis with 1,700 people over 12 years. And every 50 grams of meat increased the risk of diabetes by 8%. That's not very much. That's only about a quarter of a chicken breast, showing a measurable increase in the rate of diabetes. So the likelihood is that an intake of 0 animal products is probably best for your health. There's also ethical issues involved. I don't really feel comfortable with eating pigs, cows, and chickens when it's completely unnecessary for my health, and yet these animals are not treated well. So I figure I feel more comfortable on a moral basis just to forego eating these animals completely. And then, of course, there's environmental issues where animal agriculture is very, very hard on the environment. As always, like and subscribe, and please post your comments below. We're really curious to hear what you have to say. And just by the way, check out my videos, The Case Against Meat, parts 1 and 2, with parts 3 coming out soon, explaining why I think eating meat is not a good idea.